Okay, so get this. South Korea. It's this tiny little nation, but they're an AI powerhouse, like ranked sixth globally.
Wow.
I know, right? But here's the thing. They're kind of lagging behind when it comes to actually using AI in the business world. So we're going to do a deep dive today into NAVER. They're basically South Korea's Google. And we're going to see how this nation that is so tech-savvy is shaping the future of AI in their own country and globally. And to do that, we've got a fascinating interview with them, some stuff from their website, and some global AI rankings.
Yeah, it's kind of a head-scratcher, isn't it? You've got this country pouring resources into AI, R&D. They're doing incredibly well in rankings for scale and intensity if you look at something like the Tortoise Global AI Index. But then when you look at the rankings for commercial applications AI, they drop all the way down to 18th place.
Yeah, so what gives? I mean, what's the deal with this AI paradox?
Well, NAVER, and they're a pretty big player in the Korean AI scene, they're actually suggesting that this isn't just a Korean problem.
Yeah.
They think that the whole world is still figuring out how to actually make money from this technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in all the hype that AI is the future, but then forget about the practical side of actually turning it into a business.
Exactly. And on top of that, NAVER is also pointing to a slower evolving business ecosystem within South Korea itself. They're innovating, but the supporting network of businesses and services that they need to really take off just isn't quite there yet.
So, for those of us who might not be super familiar with Naver, can you give us the quick rundown? I know they're huge in Korea, right?
Oh yeah, huge is an understatement. NAVER is the Google of South Korea. They totally dominate the search market there. They even beat Google on Google's own turf.
Wow. Okay, so they're not just a search engine, though, right?
Right. They've also developed their own large language model called HyperCLOVA X. It's kind of like ChatGPT, but it's been specifically designed for Korean language and culture.
Ah, okay, so they're not just copying what's already out there, they're actually tailoring AI to their own specific market. I mean, how does that actually work?
Well, the Korean language has its own unique complexities and nuances. Like, for instance, honorifics. They play a huge role in Korean grammar and social interactions. So HyperCLOVA X is designed to really understand and respond to those subtleties, which is something that a more generic LLM, like ChatGPT, might have a bit of trouble with.
Yeah, that's a really good example of how they're taking this localized approach. So where are they actually using this AI? It's not just in their search engine, right?
Nope, not at all. They're integrating it across their entire ecosystem.
Mhm.
So think about it. They've got their search engine with this generative AI feature called Q. They've got their CLOVA X chatbot, which we just talked about. They have personalized recommendations, and they're even working with brands like Nike to create AI-powered ad services.
So they're really going all in on AI.
Oh, God.
They're not doing it alone. What's the broader Korean AI scene looking like these days?
Well, you've got all the big players. Samsung, LG, Hyundai. They own Boston Dynamics now, by the way. And even some big global companies like Intel. They're all part of this big web of AI development. And there are companies fine-tuning models, creating new AI-powered services, some focusing on integrating it, others building the data infrastructure. It's a real collaborative effort.
It sounds like they've got a pretty good setup over there. What do you think makes South Korea such fertile ground for AI?
2 words: internet speed. South Korea has some of the fastest internet speeds and highest smartphone penetration rates in the world. So it's just the perfect environment for developing AI and also getting really fast feedback from users so they can refine their products really quickly.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how easily people can actually use it.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to NAVER's global strategy. They're definitely expanding worldwide, but they're really focusing on creating localized AI solutions.
Okay, so walk me through that. How are they managing to go global while staying true to this localized approach? I feel like there have to be some interesting examples there.
Oh, for sure. Like, for example, they've partnered with Saudi Arabia's Aramco Digital to develop an Arabic LLM. So instead of trying to create this one-size-fits-all model, they're actually recognizing the needs of different languages and cultures. It's like they're building a custom suit for each market, if you know what I mean.
I love that analogy. So they're embedded in Korea, they're collaborating with all these major players, and they're expanding globally with this really smart, localized approach. So what's their vision for the future of AI? Where did they see this all heading?
Well, they're not necessarily betting everything on just building bigger and bigger models. They actually see a much more diverse future for AI.
You know, that's what I find so refreshing about NAVER's approach. It seems like everyone else is obsessed with these massive, super complex models, but NAVER's like, hold on, maybe we need a whole toolkit, not just one giant hammer. Exactly. They see a lot of value in both those huge LLMs, like their HyperCLOVA X, and also smaller, more nimble models, like their DASH model, which they launched earlier this year. Their argument is that different tasks require different tools.
So it's not one size fits all. I can get behind that. But how do they see these different models being used in practice?
Think of it this way. If you're baking a cake, a bigger oven might be great for creating something really impressive. But sometimes all you need is a quick cupcake, and a smaller oven will do the job just fine. The same kind of logic applies to AI. For really complex tasks, those massive models are still going to be incredibly valuable. But for more everyday applications, smaller, more efficient models can be just as effective, if not more so.
I'm starting to see how this focus on diverse models also connects with their global strategy. It's about having the right tool for the right job, no matter where you are in the world.
Exactly. And that's also where their experience in search comes in. You know, we were talking earlier about how NAVER actually managed to beat out Google in South Korea.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just by chance. They did it by really understanding the nuances of Korean language and culture and building a search engine that catered to those very specific needs.
Okay, remind me, how did they do that? You mentioned something earlier about comprehensive search. What was that all about?
So they realized pretty early on that just matching keywords wasn't really enough. They had to go deeper than that. So they were really pioneers in this idea of comprehensive search, where they went beyond basic keyword matching and started to organize search results into all these different categories, like news, shopping, images, even academic research.
So more like curating the search experience than just throwing a million results at the user.
Exactly. They really invested in building this high-quality database of Korean language content, and they created these platforms that actually encouraged users to contribute their own expertise, which just made the search results even richer. And this approach really resonated with Korean users who are known for being super tech-savvy and wanting well-organized, reliable information.
So they were basically crowdsourcing knowledge before crowdsourcing was even a thing. That's pretty brilliant. But how does this all tie back to their work in AI?
Well, this really deep understanding that they developed of the Korean language, user behavior, and those search patterns, it laid the foundation for their later innovations in AI, especially with their generative AI features like Q. They already had this incredible wealth of data and expertise that they could draw on, which gave them a huge advantage when it came to developing more sophisticated AI models.
That makes a lot of sense. They didn't just jump on the AI bandwagon, they built a really solid foundation first. And that's what allowed them to really excel in this space. It's like they were training for the AI marathon all along without even realizing it.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures their journey, and it really highlights something important that a lot of companies miss. It's the importance of local knowledge. You know, in a world that's increasingly dominated by these huge global tech giants, NAVER's story really shows us that truly understanding the specific needs of your market can be a massive advantage.
So it's about more than just having the best technology. It's about having the best technology for your specific audience, your specific market.
Precisely. And that philosophy also extends to their global expansion strategy. They're not just trying to replicate their Korean success in other markets. They're taking the time to really adapt their technology and their approach to fit the local context. It's like they're learning the language of each market before they try to have a conversation.
And their partnership with Saudi Arabia to develop that Arabic LLM is a great example of that. They're not just exporting their technology, they're co-creating it with local partners.
Exactly. And this kind of brings us back to that idea of diversifying the AI landscape.
Yeah.
Having all these different AI models that are being developed by lots of different companies and institutions, that can help ensure that AI technology reflects the needs and values of a much wider range of people and cultures. It's not about creating this monoculture of AI, but rather this rich ecosystem of all these different approaches and perspectives.
Okay, so we've talked about NAVER's success with search, their unique way of developing AI, their focus on local knowledge, and their vision for a more diverse AI landscape. But I want to circle back to something we touched on a little bit earlier, the potential risks that come with generative AI. We all know this technology is super powerful, but it's not without its downsides. So what's NAVER's stance on all this?
Well, to their credit, they're not shying away from those challenges at all. They totally acknowledge the potential for bias, misinformation, and the impact these new technologies could have on content creators and even the web as a whole.
So what are they actually doing to address these concerns? I know you mentioned things like red teams and bias mitigation, but can you kind of break those down a bit? What do those actually look like in practice?
So the red teams are basically groups of ethical hackers and AI specialists whose entire job is to try and break their models. They basically just poke and prod, trying to find those vulnerabilities and uncover potential biases. It's like having this built-in devil's advocate who's constantly pushing them to make their AI safer and more robust.
So they're actively trying to find problems before they become huge issues. That's reassuring. But what about bias? Isn't that a trickier thing to try and tackle?
It is. AI models are trained on these massive data sets, and those data sets can reflect existing societal biases. So NAVER is investing in research and development that's specifically aimed at identifying and mitigating those biases within their models. They're not just taking the data at face value. They're really working to make their AI fairer and more equitable.
That's a big deal. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with diversity, right? Having this wider range of AI models that are trained on different data sets can help counter that risk of having one dominant viewpoint.
Absolutely. It's like having a room full of people who come from different backgrounds and with different perspectives. You're going to have a much richer and more nuanced conversation than if everyone in the room thinks the exact same way.
I love that analogy. So diversity is key, not just when it comes to the people who are building AI, but also the data that's used to train it and even the models themselves.
Exactly. It's about creating a much more balanced and inclusive AI ecosystem that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's really amazing how this deep dive into NEVER and the South Korean AI scene has brought us to this much bigger conversation about AI for social good.
Yeah, it's kind of a natural progression, right?
Yeah.
As AI becomes more powerful, we can't just keep focusing on the technical stuff or how businesses can use it. We have to talk about the ethical side of it all
Yeah.
and how it's going to affect society as a whole.
We've built this incredible tool, but now it's like, okay, what do we actually do with it?
Exactly. And,
Mm.
I think South Korea, with companies like NAVER pushing for this diverse and inclusive AI environment, it's really offering some valuable lessons to the rest of the world.
So if we want to use AI to really tackle these huge global challenges, where do we even begin?
Well, first off, I think we need a bit of a mindset shift.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond seeing AI as just this money-making machine and start thinking about it more as a tool for progress.
Yeah, that's easier said than done, though, right? Most companies are driven by profits, not by, solving world hunger or curing diseases.
That's true. But there's this growing realization that those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Actually, a lot of companies are starting to see that investing in AI for social good can really boost their image, it attracts talent, and it can even open up whole new markets for them.
It's like they say doing good is good business.
Exactly. And even beyond the business side, there's a moral obligation here, right? We have this amazing tool, and I think we have a responsibility to use it to try and make the world a better place.
Totally agree. And it can't just be companies either. Governments, research institutions, individuals, everyone has a role to play in this.
Oh, absolutely. We need global collaboration to really tackle some of these huge challenges.
And we need to make sure that everyone benefits from AI. We can't create this future where only a few privileged people actually get to enjoy the benefits of this technology.
That's such an important point. If we're not careful, AI could actually end up making existing inequalities even worse.
We really have to be mindful of bias, make sure everyone has access, and always be asking ourselves, who is benefiting from this?
And who might be getting left behind?
Tough questions, but definitely questions we can't afford to ignore. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the AI landscape in South Korea, NAVER's unique approach, and all those challenges and opportunities that come with generative AI.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. What really stood out to you? What surprised you the most?
Yeah, what questions are you left with? We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep this conversation going.
One thing that's been on my mind ever since we started this deep dive is we've talked a lot about diversity in AI, the models themselves, the people who are building them. But what about diversity in the purpose of AI?
Interesting.
What do you mean by that? Well, so much of the discussion around AI, especially generative AI, is really focused on business, right? Like selling more stuff, automating tasks, boosting those profits. But what if we shifted that focus a bit?
To what?
What if we really started thinking about how AI can be used to solve some of the world's biggest problems? Climate change, poverty, disease, things like that. These are all areas where AI could potentially make a huge difference.
Using AI for social good, not just for profit. I like
Yeah,
it.
right. I think that's where the true potential of AI really lies. If we can use this technology to tackle some of humanity's biggest challenges, then we'll truly be living in this AI-powered future that's worth celebrating.
That's a really powerful thought. It reminds us that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Ultimately, it's our choice.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these questions and hopefully spark some insightful conversations of your own.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of South Korean AI. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better future.